Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Lansing Regional Chamber of Commerce Business Education Series. We are starting just a minute here before 10 a.m. and let folks work through the technology and get logged on. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. So welcome to our presenters, to our sponsors, to our attendees. I know everyone is enjoying another beautiful spring day. We actually get a spring this year. And again, welcome to all of those that are continuing to jump on and log on. We're letting folks work through the technology, get logged on here. We'll get started in 2 minutes. And again, welcome to those who are continuing to log on. Sorry if you hear me say this a couple of times, if you're an early bird, but welcome. Welcome to the Lansing Regional Chamber Business Education Series. Best hiring practices during challenging times. If you're joining us today, you are probably grappling with a hiring issue. Drive up and down any one of our mid-Michigan streets and you will see plenty of hiring signs. We have jobs, we have people. Let's build the connections and get these jobs filled and get our economic recovery back on track. So we'll get started here in about 1 minute. Again, we have folks continuing to log on, so welcome to those who are joining us. Would like to, again, we'll formally open up this program. We have about an hour and we have a lot of information to cover from Terry and her team, so we'll get this program started. Would like to formally welcome you to the Lansing Regional Chamber Business Education Series. This time in May, we're going to be focusing on the best hiring practices during these challenging times. Hiring was challenging before the pandemic entered our lives, and it's continuing to throw a wrench in our economic recovery. So you are all joining us today to hear from the experts, to fill these open positions, and again, to continue to put this economic recovery on track. Our business education series programs are generously sponsored by the team at Fraser Law Firm. We aim to provide tips, tricks, tools, resources that businesses can go right back to their office and implement. I'd like to give Eric just a couple of minutes to speak on behalf of Fraser, and then we'll get the program going.
Thank you, Michelle. We're so glad you could join us today. Looks to be a great and timely topic with Terry this morning. Fraser Chillicothe is proud to sponsor the series because we recognize how valuable it is for the Chamber to provide members like all of us with resources such as this series. Fraser Chillicothe is one of Michigan's longest established full-service law firms that has offices in Detroit, Grand Rapids, and headquartered right here in Lansing in the Bogie Tower. Some of our practice areas include business and tax, cottage law, intellectual property, litigation, and trust and estates, just to name a few. But our attorneys are skilled in more than 70 niche areas, especially focusing on serving small to medium-sized business needs. When it matters in Michigan, we are the trusted legal advisors for businesses and individuals. You can learn more at Fraser, Fraser, lawfirm.com. Thank you, and we hope that you enjoy this presentation.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you so much for the continued support. Your support allows us to do programs like this and really get these resources into the hands of businesses that need them today. We are going to be hearing today from Terry Sand, who is the Business Services Manager for Capital Area Michigan Works. She oversees the business services team as they assist local hiring managers with customizing their recruiting strategies. After earning a Bachelor of Science in Business degree with a double major in Personnel and Employee Relations Management and Organizational Behavior, Terry went to work with Elder Bierman Department Stores and has worked a variety of HR and staffing positions since then. In 2015, she earned the Society for Human Resource Management Certified Professional and is an active member of the Greater Lansing Society for Human Resources Management. So I think that all tells you that you are in really good hands with the information that you are going to hear. We do want this program to be interactive, so as you have questions, drop them into the chat function or the Q&A function. We will definitely get to those at the end of the program. Again, we want this to be a really good back and forth dialogue. And lastly, we are going to enable the closed caption for accessibility. So bear with me here as we get that enabled. And Terry, we will get your presentation shared and you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for that glowing introduction. And thank you to Fraser for sponsoring this today. And thank each and every one of you for being here. I know this topic is very timely, and I'm confident that despite your struggles before you hear this presentation, I'm confident you will walk away with, Michelle called them tips and tricks. I'm not sure about tricks, but definitely some tips that you can use right now to make a difference in your recruiting. So our time is limited, and let's get started. If you can even remember the last time that all you did to fill a particular position was put one sign, one now hiring sign in the front window of your business, and that position was filled within the less than the 2 weeks notice of the person who had resigned, I'd like you to note in the chat how recent that was, because my guess is either no one's going to enter that, excuse me, or it's been so long ago that, we really don't even remember. It's been so long since all we had to do was put that one sign in the window, excuse me. And it's also been a really long time since you've seen lines like, excuse me, to the next slide, please, Michelle. It's been a really long time since you've seen long lines like this one for candidates eager to apply and eager to show up at on-site events, right? And like Michelle said, this is not new since COVID. COVID simply brought it to the light even more, and it's made the problem even more challenging, but it is not new. Many of you have been struggling with these recruiting issues for a long time. So I don't want to spend the little time we have today focusing on maybe what got us to this situation. Instead, let's talk about those practical suggestions you can use right now to make some difference in your recruiting. I've broken the topic down into 3 main areas. So we'll discuss recruiting during these challenging times in 3 parts. Of course, I've got plenty of suggestions for you of how to recruit new candidates. But first, I think we need to take a look at keeping our current employees, as well as how our current employees can actually help us with our recruiting. So we're going to start there. And then we'll spend a few minutes at the very end talking about the importance of building a future pipeline as well. And many of the things that I want to share with you today could be their very own 30-minute presentation. So rather than getting really super specific into lots of those things, I would rather give you as many broad ideas as possible. I know we've got a wide variety of occupations and industries represented in the audience today, so I want to give you as many broad ideas as possible. And we will actually take a couple questions between each of those the first 2 sections, and then as much time is left at the very end for all other questions. So like Michelle said, please put those in the chat. Okay, next slide, please. We'll start with retaining your current employees, as I said. Next slide, please. Gallup's State of the American Manager report says 50% of American workers have left at least one job in their career because of a manager that they worked with. Now, my coworker, Erin McKenzie, is going to enter the link to that report in the chat, and she'll be doing similar entries into the chat of resources as I mention them. So if you want to reference this particular report or any of the other things, you'll find those handy in the chat. But that report, 50% have left a job because of a manager. I found that statistic staggering because that's not been my experience. I guess I've been blessed with some pretty good managers, but it made me think that that statistic comes from somewhere, right? They certainly didn't make it up. So 50% have left because of a manager. You don't want that happening to your business ever, and you certainly don't want that happening to your business right now. So start there. If you haven't already, address some issues with your managers and or train all of your managers to make sure their people relationship skills, whatever you want your managers to know and to be treating their employees in the ways that keep your employees and keep them happy, is happening at your business right now. So start with that management issues that may be happening. Another staggering statistic, in my opinion, is turnover. So the Work Institute estimates that it costs at least $15,000 to replace the average employee in the US. So the average employee, of course, they take into account every entry-level position, every executive position, and across the board to come up with that average. So some of you may find $15,000 to be a small number, others that might be large. If you Google how much does turnover cost, or what's the cost to replace one employee, you'll find a variety of calculators and a variety of numbers. They all have one thing in common. It's expensive to lose a new employee. So whatever number that you look at, it's expensive to lose those employees, especially the ones that you want to keep, the ones you didn't want to see leave. So I want to start there. Since we're still in the midst of COVID, now I know that on Friday, some of our CDC guidelines and even governor's suggestions have relaxed a little bit, but I still want to talk about COVID today, as some of your businesses may choose to keep your COVID safety protocols in place, or let's hope it doesn't happen. But if there is another resurgence someday or something similar in the future, maybe these tips will still help you. So I do want to still talk about COVID here with our current employees, and I'll mention it again when we talk about recruiting new candidates. So starting with COVID. Are all of your workers aware of everything that's been done to make sure the workplace is safe, as well as making sure the workers who've not yet chosen to return to work, do they know all of those efforts that you've made to make sure the workplace is safe? My guess is you've told them once. However, once may not be enough. You may need to remind them frequently, or maybe you're adding new protocols and new processes or new barriers or something like that, and not everyone is aware of that. So make sure that everyone does know what efforts you've made. One thing COVID has pointed out is the need for flexibility and innovation, and many of you have really stepped up in those areas. It's vital. So let me pause for a second and give you an example. Your workers have options if you haven't noticed. Michelle said earlier about all the help wanted signs nearby. Absolutely. So just 2 Thursdays ago, a week and a half ago now, a local person that I know had given me an update on their job search. They had started that job search just 10 days before that. So that's 10 calendar days even, not even 2 entire business weeks. And in those 10 days, they had already been on several interviews, had received 3 job offers, turned 2 of those job offers down because of pay, this person said, and was holding off giving that 3rd offer an answer because they had an interview scheduled the following week with even a 4th company. So those numbers are astounding to me, that one person can have that many offers, not just even interviews, offers in such a short amount of time. So you've got to remember that your workers have options, and your flexibility and willingness to kind of meet them where they're at is more vital than ever. And so some of those things that you probably already looked at during COVID, you want to perhaps take a new look at. Or even if you were thinking that after COVID, we can move everything back to the way that it used to, that may not in every case be a way of keeping your current workers. So take a new look at remote work. Who possibly could work remotely, even if it's some days, not necessarily every one of their working hours. So maybe it's occasionally they can work from home or where they choose. Are flexible hours, split shifts, non-traditional hours, an option, so that some of them might be able to work in the workplace when there are as few other people as possible. That may help folks with the transportation issue. It may help your workers who are working parents and have school-aged children at home. And it would certainly help someone with an compromised immune system who, again, wants to work when there's as few other people in the workplace as possible. Are some of the tasks that might have been done in person something that could be delayed? Can they be done less frequently than they used to be? Could those tasks be reassigned? Could they even be rotated so the same employee is not always responsible for those? As I said, you probably already addressed those things in the last 14 months, but I wanted to just mention it again as an opportunity to take a new look, as well as how can we remain as flexible and innovative with keeping our current employees, even when our COVID restrictions might relax. Now, one more thought about COVID. We can't leave a COVID discussion right now when we're talking to employers without mentioning the vaccine. There's been a lot of debate about whether you should mandate your workers to get the vaccine before they come back to in-person work, or should you even provide an incentive? Well, I'm going to leave that discussion to you and your lawyer because I'm not a lawyer. My suggestion, though, is that you anonymously survey your workers and find out how many have already made the choice to get vaccinated. And then, assuming that number is positive, share that out with your current workers. X% have already chosen to get vaccinated, and that may help some workers make that decision to come back for the in-person work. Okay, aside from COVID, I have some other suggestions for retention as well. It's always a good time to invest in your workers, training them on new equipment or software or issues that are facing your industry, issues that are facing their specific occupation. All of those kinds of things sometimes are required, but it also is helpful even if you're doing it at your own choice. And maybe there are some workers who haven't obtained occupational certifications yet. That may be a way to help your company show them that you are investing in them, you care about them, you want them here, you want them long term. So we've already made it clear that there are options. Your workers have options. So you want them to stay working with you. And sometimes if they don't feel there's a future for them, or they don't feel you care about their professional development, those other options begin looking attractive. So take another look at what you're doing to train your current workers. If there are career ladders in your company, so that, starting at one particular position often leads comfortably to this next position, which often leads to something else, make those career ladders known. Not every employee often knows what those are, even though at your level you probably think it's very clear. Sometimes it's not. So make that known, and that will show another investment in your workers. Apprenticeships are one way to help you formalize training for workers that often you want to make sure they all get that same level, same kind of training. It kind of has some steps to it. Now, that's one example where Erin's going to put some contact information in the chat box if you want to learn a little bit more about apprenticeships. So that's just one way. And keep in mind that when I was growing up, apprenticeships were well known in the skilled trades area, and that's about it. Not today. Apprenticeships can be found in many careers. Even locally, we've had some recently start in the IT field, in medical, you name it. So check that out if there's a possibility that apprenticeships might help you with keeping your current workers. So as important as training is, that alone is not enough. We certainly want to help your workers feel welcome and included. Everyone wants to feel welcome and included. And right now, some of that isolation came from, COVID restrictions and so forth. And so people might be even feeling the stronger need to feel welcome and included than they may have in the past, even though it's typically just a human need to. So on your inclusion efforts, take a look at job titles. Are any of your current job titles including any sort of a stereotype or even a stated maybe gender or something like that? So the first one that comes to my mind is foreman. Or even when I was driving on I-96 the other day, I saw a billboard that referenced the job title salesman. So I know those titles are out there that blatantly state a gender or imply even some other kind of stereotype. So take a look at those job titles, see if you can come up with something that's more inclusive. If you're struggling with that, start with asking the workers who currently have that job title for suggestions. They might be able to help you come up with something that's a little bit more inclusive and that they would support. You also might want to take a look by helping your current workers learn about each other's cultures, religions, pronouns, values, things like that. So starting with what your current workers, what's important to them, and help increase the understanding and learning about other people with that. And then you could expand to learning about other cultures, other religions, other pronouns, other values that are not yet represented in your business. There's lots of resources. So if that's new to you, there are lots of resources to help you. That's just one of the things that I said could be its very own 30, 60, 90, much longer topic. So I didn't want to dwell on that today, but I did want to let you know a couple ideas of where to get started. So back to keeping your current employees. There are a vast number of reasons that people leave that are actually preventable. Now, of course, we already mentioned issues with management, but aside from that, there are still reasons people leave that are preventable. So absenteeism comes to my mind. If you've ever had to terminate someone for absenteeism, or you would say maybe terminated themselves because they broke the policy on attendance so many times that there was nothing left to do but for them to leave. It may have been the situation that they were too embarrassed to tell you what caused that absenteeism. Whatever they were dealing with, they probably didn't tell you. A childcare issue, a transportation issue, depression, domestic abuse, who knows? All those many life things they were dealing with, they just didn't want to tell you. So the Business Resource Network in our region is here for that type of situation. They can help you in addition to your employee assistance program by working individually with the workers that you want them to help. They can identify what those barriers are that person is facing and help them overcome those situations so that they remain that productive employee for you at your company instead of leaving and going somewhere else. So Erin will put some information in the chat for the Business Resource Network. So keeping your current employees, it's important to keep them happy, right? And you don't want to make assumptions about what makes your workers happy. So ask them, conduct stay interviews if you're not already doing that. Find out what they like about the company. Why do they stay? What do they like about their particular roles? And you'll be able to use that information then to help them stay even longer. And it may be helpful in some cases to provide an incentive to your workers to stay. We've already established that they have options, and some of those options are attractive with sign-on bonuses. So you want to keep your workers from looking at those many options that they have and keep them content right where they are, more than content, happy. So it's possible that even the smallest but most sincere incentive right now to stay would be well appreciated. So, just letting them know how much you sincerely appreciate them sticking with you in this difficult time might be well appreciated despite its size, okay? Now, when we talk about bonuses and incentives, that reminds me of wages. So we want to think for a moment, have you taken a wage comparison lately? During COVID, some companies increased their wages and also for certain positions provided hazard pay premiums. So it's very possible if you didn't take a wage comparison lately that your wages might not be competitive. So take a look and make sure that is another reason that your employees are staying, because you're paying them well and those other options are not attractive to them. Next slide, please. Okay, that was a lot of ideas, but it's still not enough. Most likely you will need to recruit new candidates. But when we say that, what you typically mean is you need candidates who will first of all apply and then return your texts, return your calls, return your emails, actually interview for the interviews that they scheduled, right? So incent the actions that your current employees will want to help you with that. So what does that look like? Well, provide your current employees with an incentive, such as cash, for just giving you the name and contact information of someone they'd like to work with. Just the name and contact information, that's all I need. Then when that referral actually returns your text, returns your call, returns your email, provide that current employee with cash again. And then when that person they referred actually interviews with you, cash again to the current employee. Now, by all means, reward that current employee if their referral is actually hired and successfully sticks around for a while. Absolutely. Just don't make that the only reward so long afterwards. Okay, so incent the actions that you actually want right now, and you might see some significant help from your current workers with your recruiting. But regardless of the details of your particular company's employee referral incentive program, widely and frequently publicize it to your current employees. Now, maybe there's a sign in the break room, or maybe you think you've told them all about it, but unless you told them last week, I bet they've forgotten all about it. So you want to widely publicize it and remind them frequently. Actually give them the words that you want to use. Give them the text and the links you want them to use in their social media. Make it easy for them. And then, of course, celebrate the employees who do make referrals to you, whether that's publicly in a staff meeting, if you use company newsletters, whatever way you can reward them, make sure that it is in front of some of their other coworkers as well. Now, another group who can help you with your recruiting are your former employees, at least the former employees that left in good standing, right? So reach back out to those former employees who left in good standing. See what they're doing these days. Would they want to come back? Would you invite them to apply again? And if not, if they're not interested or they're doing something else, see if they have a referral of someone else who might like to apply. And similarly, take a look at your former candidates. When you had more than one candidate that you liked, who met those qualifications, who's passed the background check or whatever you did, you simply could only make one job offer. You still had them as good qualified candidates. So reach back out, see what they're doing, see if they'd like to apply again. And if they say no, ask if they might know someone else who would like to apply. So you could potentially get some help with your current employees and former candidates and former employees. So let's pause there for just a couple questions, if there's any in the chat, Michelle, regarding retaining current employees and soliciting the help of current and former employees.
It looks like you're okay at this point to move on to the next section.
Okay, next slide then. Thank you.
Well, as I said, that one popped into the chat box. What amount would you suggest for a cash incentive?
Okay, so I think they're talking about the cash incentive for referrals. Certainly it's going to vary on your budget and maybe even your industry, but the first dollar figure that pops in my mind would be $20. So see if that's a reasonable budget for your particular situation. Could you give your current workers $20 for just the name and contact information of a person they would like to work with? Any other questions so far?
There was a question about one of these surveys that you referenced, just what exactly that was, and maybe that's something that Erin can share in the chat function.
Are they talking about surveying your current workers regarding how many got vaccinated?
Survey for COVID vaccine and other resources.
Okay. I wasn't referencing a survey that someone else had conducted. I was suggesting that each company might want to survey their current workers to find out how many of their current workers have already made the choice to get vaccinated, and then sharing those results with your company's employees. And that may help some people at least feel more comfortable in coming back for in-person work when you need them to.
Sure. And if somebody is looking for a mock survey or a draft survey to use for their staff members, we the Chamber have created one in our relaunch Greater Lansing Vaccine Guide. So that's another resource that we'll add to the chat function and send in a follow-up email as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Excellent. Okay.
And I think that's it. And you can go on to your next slide.
Okay, fantastic, which I think we need the next slide after that one, right? Okay, so recruiting new employees. Recruiting new candidates starts with updating all of your job ads. And my favorite expert on job ad rewrites is 3 Ears Media. So Erin is going to put their website in the chat as well if you'd like to check them out. So your ads should encourage candidates to actually apply. Now you might be asking me, well, isn't that obvious? Of course, our job ads encourage candidates to apply. Well, actually, no. Actually, too often anyways, the only person who would read that job ad and say, yes, that actually encourages candidates to apply is the person who wrote it. So there's lots of reasons for that. Let's start with length. Many of them are too long. So if they're too long, candidates aren't going to apply. Or if they're too long, they're confusing and candidates won't apply. If they're filled with jargon or legalese, candidates won't apply either. So you want the ad to be brief. Start by decreasing the quantity of bullets in the ad. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, wait a minute, I just had a huge triumph over the last couple of years transitioning all my job ads from lengthy paragraphs into bullets. And now you're telling me I need even fewer bullets? Yes, start there. You want the whole ad to be brief. You don't want those long laundry lists of reasons candidates should not apply. I mean, those long lists of minimum qualifications. The longer that list, the fewer candidates you're even going to get. Now, females typically will only apply when they believe they meet 100% of the minimum qualifications, whereas males typically will apply when they simply feel they meet most of the qualifications. So there's a big difference there in the quantity of applications you would get just by the gender of people reading it. So after you decrease those bullets, then take a look at the job title. Just like we talked about for your current employees, the job title and the entire job ad, of course, needs to be inclusive, but start with a look at that job title. So if one Google search for the job title you'd like to use doesn't bring up the exact same meaning that you intend for it, then consider a different job title as well. You want a job title that's understandable, that's common, that's clearly understandable of what you're talking about. So run one quick Google search and see what you find, and then decide if you want to use that particular title or not. Now, yes, you absolutely can use a different job title in your job ads than you later assign to the official worker after they've been hired, okay? At the job ad stage, you're still several steps away from legal documents, so don't worry about that. Those of you that want to be very creative with your job titles, wait and assign that creative job title after hire. Okay, here's where I wanted to talk about COVID for recruiting new candidates. So your job ads should state, first of all, it should state that yes, we're still open, our business has survived, but then add to that, what's going on in your company? Are you hiring because of growth, expansion, replacing retirees? What's the situation? Let them know. And then state how you know your company is safe against COVID. What have you done to make that workplace safe for them? And here's one example that I like from a company that here's how they put it in their job ads. And it starts out with all capital letters. Don't want to catch COVID-19? Neither do we, nor our customers. The rest is little letters. We take temperatures every day, and anyone that feels ill or has a fever is sent home. Employees also have to sign off, stating that they haven't been around anyone that's been exposed to COVID-19. End quote. So short and simple, but that one just always makes me smile when I see it. So the next thing in updating your job ads is to make sure it states, why do people want to work there? What's the ultimate purpose of your company? What's the ultimate purpose of this specific role? Why would someone even want to work there? And certainly that ultimate purpose is more than a paycheck. So if you're having trouble, finding a definition for that ultimate purpose, refer back to those stay interviews you conducted with your current employees, or what's your experience? What do you like about that company? Why do you stay? Or just ask a couple people, why would someone want this role? Also, when you're updating your job ads, state If your company invests in its workers, maybe you have paid training, maybe you have career advancement, maybe you promote from within, state those kinds of things in your job ad. It's very possible that someone who sees that is willing to start with your company in that particular role, even when they see themselves heading in a few other areas within your company later. So when they know that that's an option, state that. So just like we talked about letting your current workers know about the career ladders, you want to help your candidates know those options are possible as well. And as long as you're updating your job ads, please include the starting wage or starting wage range in them. Now, many ads have not been doing that. And here's the situation when it's not listed. The candidates assume that it's not listed because that starting wage is low. Now, you probably know that's not true. I may know you have great starting wages, but candidates don't always know you have great starting wages. And if they're assuming that it's a low starting wage and they choose not to apply for that reason alone, you're losing great candidates. So don't let the wage be the only reason that they don't apply. And then lastly, while you're updating your job ads, you must provide candidates with multiple methods to apply, and those methods should be easy to use and easy to navigate. Not everyone has access to reliable internet these days, and a lot of people who do are accessing it from their cell phones, right? And yet the online applications that they're asked to navigate are not even mobile friendly. So take a look at those kinds of things. Look at the processes you ask candidates to use and try to experience that from the candidate's perspective and ensure that it's mobile friendly, it's accessible, it's easy to use, etc. Now think for a moment. If a candidate called you on the phone, would you hang up on them? I really don't think you would. I think you would have a brief conversation with them. If they emailed you, I think a candidate, you would have a brief conversation through email as well. So if that's the case, include that phone number, include that email address right in the job ad as an additional method to apply. Okay? Make it easy and give them choices of the ways that they could contact you. Next slide, please. So once you've updated all those job ads to ensure that they have the right message you want to convey, your next step in recruiting new candidates is to share those updated job ads widely and through a large variety of sources. Now, recently I had passed a restaurant in Okemos where every square foot of the grass in front of their property had a now hiring type of sign in front of it. It was crystal clear to everyone who passed that particular restaurant that they were hiring. So certainly that company is right, that the first place to start is something outside of your company, outside the building. Not necessarily as many signs as they used, but at least is there a sign outside your business that you are actually hiring? Now, I also want you to take a look at where do we put that sign? It's not always best to just put it at the front door or just put it at the main parking lot entrance, but take a look at where your physical business is located. If it's in a high traffic area, there may be other sides of your property that have more visible high traffic areas than just the front parking lot or just the front door. So wherever it makes sense for you and your property, make sure there's at least one sign out front that you are actually hiring right now. Secondly, your company website. Make sure that your company website has a place to apply or a place to find the information of what applications are available and what that process looks like. So that should be easy to find right from the home page. So there should be a clearly identified careers, job openings, now hiring, whatever you want to call it, right from the home page. If you instead want the candidates to magically find the About Us page, and then from About Us find the, let's say, Contact Us page, and only then are the careers listed, they are not going to find it. So it needs to be front and forward, very easy to use, very easy to find. So check and check. You've got a sign out front on the most visible, highest traffic side of the building. You've got the job openings on your company website. Then take a look at the outward facing aspects of your business and where can appropriate now hiring messages be put. So for example, if your industry is in retail, for example, could the bags that customer purchases are slid into be printed on the outside of those bags with some kind of now hiring message and the methods to apply, or even a flyer inserted inside the bag perhaps? Or could the software on the cash register print out a receipt that shows the now hiring methods to apply and something about the fact that you're hiring right now? I know I've been a customer where the cashier will hand me a receipt and they circle or highlight the customer service survey that they want me to take. Great, but why couldn't they instead be pointing to, here's the job openings, we'd love to work with you, here's the method we'd like you to use to apply? Think about something like that. Now, if you're in a different industry, maybe you have the type of industry where there are some company vehicles running around town. So maybe those vehicles could have a "Follow me to a great career" or "Now hiring great drivers" sign right on each and every one of those vehicles. The key there is to remember to make that message easy to remember and short, so that someone who sees that vehicle in motion could still very quickly remember whatever that email address, whatever that website, whatever that quick phone number is that you've put down. So make it easy to remember. Now, if that's not right for your industry, maybe you have workers who wear company t-shirts out and about during their workday. This time of year, landscapers come to my mind. So couldn't the back of their company t-shirt state something about now hiring or want to work with me and the method that you need them to apply? So those kinds of t-shirts would be seen while they're out and about doing their work, when they're at the gas station gassing up the vehicles, when they're in line buying their lunch, right? People might see that. Now, maybe you have workers who use email as a big part of their tasks. Could their email signature say something like, "Want to work with me?" and the method that you want them to apply, or the method to find out where those job openings are, something like that. Maybe your industry does mailings to its customers or an online newsletter. Put a now hiring message right in there. Almost every company these days uses some form of social media. So if you've got a LinkedIn page, a Facebook page, whatever you're using, share in that method the job openings with your followers. Let them know, and they may be able to help spread the word for you as well. Maybe your organization or some of your employees are members of certain occupational organizations or industry-focused organizations. Reach out and see if you can share your job openings through those channels. And maybe your business has customers calling you and occasionally they get put on hold. Well, consider editing that call waiting message so occasionally they hear something about your job openings and the methods to apply. So those are just the first few ideas that I have regarding some outward facing aspects of your company and how you might be able to help use those aspects of your business to spread the word that you are hiring. And all of those ideas are still what I consider post and pray. You've used the aspects of your company to put the message out there, and you're waiting for candidates to respond. Next slide, please. In this market, we can't just post and pray. So successful hiring managers are proactively seeking candidates out. And so that today often starts with social media. There are some social media groups. So find social media groups that pertain to the occupation of the job openings or even the industry that your business is in, and see if you can share the openings through those groups. In the Lansing area, we're blessed to have several job search groups on Facebook. Now, those groups are not limited to a particular industry nor a particular occupation. You could join some of those groups and share the message. It would get out to a wider audience than the number of followers that are just on your particular company's page. Reach out to schools or churches near your business and see if they can share the now hiring messages with their members and anyone that they come in contact with and the communication channels that they use. If you're interested in recruiting military veterans, reach out to your local VFW, American Legion Hall, things like that. And also the Invest Vets networking group in Michigan. And Erin's going to put their contact information in the chat. So that particular group is meeting through social media these days online and networking to help veterans find work. Let them know that you are hiring. There is typically very high unemployment among some candidate groups, and it's possible that your messages haven't yet reached these particular groups. So I wanted to mention a couple, and some of those are candidates who are supported by Michigan Rehabilitation Services and the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons. And Erin will put some contact information in the chat for them. Similarly, new Americans are typically underemployed. Now, these workers are absolutely legitimately eligible for work in the US. That's undeniable. And they are typically underemployed. So whatever work they were, a profession and career and education they were doing in another country, likely they are not yet doing that level here, and they are eager to work and more use the skills that they have. So reach out. Erin is putting some information in the chat for them as well. Similarly, Michigan Department of Corrections Vocational Village teaches certifications for many in-demand occupations. I just got an email from them this morning. They had resumes of candidates who had learned automotive trades, CNC, welding, plumbing, electrical, a host of things. So if any of those kinds of positions are right for your industry, Erin is going to put some information in the chat where you can learn a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. Okay, in reaching the general public, there are many options. So start with considering radio, TV, billboards, even Craigslist. All of those kinds of methods can help you reach a much wider audience. Virtual job fairs have also been very popular this past year. In fact, in April, one of the virtual job fairs we hosted had 30 employers participate and 264 job seekers. In fact, our peers and some folks at the state of Michigan have been asking us what we did to get such great attendance at that event. So the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity makes that job search, virtual job fair platform available at no cost. So certainly let us know if you'd like more information on that. And it just allows you, the hiring manager, to connect with job seekers through everyone's convenience on a smartphone, a PC, a tablet, everyone's convenience wherever they're using the internet. Now, on-site events certainly have been happening too, absolutely. My advice there, though, is to make sure that the marketing of the event, which is critical to market it properly, but the marketing must include your COVID safety protocols and at least one other method to apply if they choose not to attend that event in person or simply aren't available for the date and the time of your on-site event. Another resource, of course, is my favorite, me and the business services team at Capital Area Michigan Works. So Erin will put my contact information in the chat for you. And of course, our Lansing region has many great staffing agencies. So reach out. Some of them staff just occupations in a certain industry. Some of them provide staffing across the board. So I'm confident there's several that could help you as well. Lots of great ideas for you, but that is still not enough. No, a proactive, successful hiring manager in this market would still need to do more. Now, you might be shaking your head and saying, well, our company is large. Everybody knows about us. Or our company has been in the Lansing area a really long time. Everybody knows about us. Sadly, not all candidates do. And if they don't know of your company, they are not going to your careers page to just see what you have open these days, right? So you have to proactively seek candidates out. Now, there are several websites where you can actually search candidate profiles. And the first one, Erin will put the web address in the chat, is the Pure Michigan Talent Connect. That website is available at no cost to any user. It's the official way in Michigan for businesses and job seekers to connect. So it's important not just to post your openings, but to also search the candidate profiles and find the candidates who have the skills that you're looking for. There are some other websites that have similar functionalities, most of which you have to pay for, but I certainly wanted to mention them in case you need some ideas. LinkedIn, Indeed, CareerBuilder, ZipRecruiter, just the first couple that came to my mind. So again, use those sources to post your openings, but to also search the candidate profiles. When you're running those candidate searches, job titles are an okay place to start, but don't let that be your only search. You also want to search for keywords, whatever keywords are important to the particular role. Maybe it's some of the skills you're looking for. Maybe it's the environment that they're working with. Maybe it's the software they'd be using. So don't just limit yourself to job titles, and do multiple searches for the same position, and you'll find different candidates pop up. There might be some candidates who pop up in more than one search, of course, but I don't want you to just run one search and think that that's the only set of candidates available to you. Next slide, please. So regardless of whether a candidate responds to your job ad or an employee referral, or you found their profile someplace, once you connect with the candidate, you need to communicate with them. And in this particular market, that communication needs to be immediate. Remember that person I mentioned earlier who in 10 calendar days had over 3 job offers? So time's a wasting, right? You must communicate with them immediately. Start with text. Texting candidates seems to be the best way of reaching them right now. So text them first and then follow up with a phone call and an email. Yes, and all 3 methods. Reach out, reach out, reach out. Try everything you can until you connect. I also suggest that you offer to conduct that first interview, the very first connection. You know, if they're returning your call or they're answering that phone when you dial it, or they've responded by text, immediately when you've got their attention, offer to conduct that interview right now. Maybe something like, is this a good time for you to interview? Some will say yes, some will say no. If they say no, you'll schedule it. But if they say yes, you've got their attention right now. Let's take care of as much as we possibly can in that initial communication with them. You're telling me over and over and over about this ghosting from candidates. They're not returning your calls. They're not returning your emails. They're not returning your texts. They're not showing up for interviews, right? I know that's happening. So minimize that happening to you by taking as care of as many steps as you possibly can of your process in that initial communication. Okay. Another idea might be to offer candidates the option to videotape themselves answering your first interview questions and emailing that interview back to you. It would allow those who are comfortable, not everyone will take you up on this offer, so, but those who do, they can schedule that in or videotape that interview of themselves in the comfort of their own home at whatever time is comfortable for them, midnight if they choose. So at least you're getting that first interview, and they're likely feeling even more comfortable than fitting it around your needs. And communication, of course, needs to be immediate, but it also needs to be frequent, and it needs to be personalized. So if you want to prevent or minimize that ghosting, frequent and personalized. So you want to let that candidate know why you like them. What is it about their skills, that person, not just filling a position, right? What do you like about them? And what are the next steps in the process? Really, you can use any excuse to reach out to them, but just make sure it's immediate, it's frequent, and it's personalized. And I would like to suggest that you set realistic expectations for yourself. So what do I mean by that? A perfect example is if your company's process might have been that you recruit until you have 10 qualified candidates to schedule first interviews. I don't think you can afford to wait that long anymore. Again, I'm going to go back to that same example I just referenced a moment ago. That one person in only 10 calendar days had over 3 job offers. So you can't wait. So the very moment that you have a couple of candidates that meet your minimum qualifications, conduct that first interview, get the process moving, show them you're interested, and either they are or they aren't moving on to the next step. So I don't think you can wait that long. And I think more realistic expectations are a small number of qualified candidates rather than a large number of unqualified candidates. Okay, let's pause there, Michelle. Are there any questions in the chat yet regarding recruiting new candidates?
Not at this time, so we'll finish up here and we'll kind of open it back up to questions at the end here. I know we're getting close to the 11 o'clock hour.
Okay.
So
All right, super. Next slide, please. And the next slide after that. So when you're in crisis mode, of course, it's difficult to think about the future, but it is important to think about your future pipeline as well. So apprenticeships is one place to do that. We talked about that for your current workers. It's important to build that pipeline as well. My Career Quest is going to take place in November, and that could be an opportunity for you to show 8th through 11th graders what's involved in the careers at your company. And Erin will put some information in the chat for them. Reach out to the colleges, the schools, the career centers in our area, offer to host tours, job shadows, work experience, internships, to be a mock interviewer, any of those kinds of things in each way that that school will let you connect, okay? And many of those opportunities can be done virtually as well. Maybe some workers at your company can make presentations for their students. Maybe someone could sit on their advisory board, which would even give your company input into the curriculum. Now, my favorite local innovative way of building the future pipeline is Lansing Board of Water and Light First Step. That stands for School to Employment Program. And the board hires high school seniors January through May to work half days. So the students go to school half their day and then they work at the board half of the day. It has exposed those students to both the traditional and non-traditional careers at the board, including IT, customer service, things that people would have never thought even were at the Board of Water and Light. Many First Step graduates have gone on to full-time employment at the board, and it has been super successful, and the board is very eager to share details. So we have their permission, and Erin has put some contact information in the chat for anyone who wants more information on that. So the next slide, please. We've talked about a lot of information today in a short amount of time on recruiting new workers, keeping your current workers and how they can help you recruit, and even planting a few seeds for your future workers. So the next slide should have my contact information on it. Are there any questions I can answer for the group?
One of the questions that I had jotted down here, my small business or my industry can't afford to necessarily pay more in terms of an hourly wage or a salary. How can they be competitive for talent?
Sure, excellent question. Excuse me, and I doubt you're alone, so thanks for asking it. Where I would start there is those stay interviews. If you're not doing them, at least find out what is it that keeps your current workers happy, or what would keep them happy, and then find maybe some intangible things that would keep them if they're starting to look elsewhere, or what does keep them and keep them happy, so that you can find out what some of those intangible things are. You know, maybe it's just, you know, the great camaraderie and the family feeling, they feel included. You know, maybe you've got that inclusion thing nailed down. You are a great place for everyone to be their authentic self when they're at work, or, you know, that alone doesn't cost you anything, but just helping to spread that word that you're a great workplace and those kinds of things, or find out what it is that is important to them. It doesn't always have to be cash or tangible means of or wage increases, although sometimes that's helpful. It doesn't always have to be wage. But I think you should at least do a wage comparison to know we're off by how much or what percent, and then if and when the next budget discussion comes up, or what changes can be made to help us ever get closer to that when we can.
You have to understand the gap so you can learn how to kind of address it. Businesses are really having an issue with being ghosted, you know, from the application to the interview process, you know, just to even the starting date, not showing up for even the first day of work. How can businesses work through that and build a relationship with an employee before they even start to prevent that?
Exactly. I'm guessing that the question may have been entered before I addressed it, but I'll start with just reminding some of the thoughts that I had there. Was that frequent communication, that immediate communication, using all forms of communication, the text, the email, the phone. If somebody's resume shows a mailing address, you know, maybe you put something in the mail to them. Every possible way that you can possibly reach out as frequently and personally and keeping them in touch is helpful. I know that's not going to be foolproof such that you never get ghosted ever again, but I think you want to try as many ways of reaching out as possible. And maybe it takes more than one worker at your company. So maybe your role, let's say, is the recruiter, but maybe you connect them with the hiring manager at a certain stage of that game and let them ask questions of that hiring manager and see if they kind of get along with that person. Do they feel a connection? Do they feel wanted? Do they feel like that's the right company for them?
We have a question just come in about increasing involvement in virtual meetings and what can folks do to make them more successful and interactive?
Okay, so I think that means, we have staff meetings or something like that. The staff are logged in, but they're not necessarily cameras on or asking questions or showing that they're actually present. If I'm misunderstanding the question, let me know. Oh, goodness. I know there is a debate about whether you should require your workers to have cameras on, so I'm going to stay out of that debate. So I would say just maybe specifically asking questions and making sure, not necessarily, Terry, how do you feel in every single circumstance, because some workers don't respond well to that. So part of that needs to be getting to know your workers, and maybe that takes some one-on-ones from their supervisors to get to know the strengths and weaknesses and where, if called upon, who are the people who would just, fall to pieces, or who are the people that's okay. And then even asking them, it's similar to that stay interview idea, but, so in staff meetings, I've noticed that you've not had any feedback for us. You've not asked any questions. You've not jumped in the conversation. What would make you more comfortable, or what is making you uncomfortable? And finding out on a one-on-one basis where you can help each individual.
That's very helpful. And clearly it's something I think that we're all continuing to grapple with as we spend, 15 months on Zoom in our little, 2x2 box here. So,
and it's transferable. Even when you're back in the workplace, we still have folks that still sit in the back of the room and don't necessarily contribute either. It's just more visible. So, it's still a skill that you'll want to work on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That is all the questions that had come up in the chat box. I just kind of want to recap, the discussion that Terry led us on, and really retaining, recruiting, and building that future pipeline. We will share a follow-up email with all of our registrants that will share all the links that Aaron was dropping into the chat box, and including a couple of things that the chamber mentioned. We have a big hurdle in front of us. I pulled up some quick numbers before we jumped onto this program, and there's 249,000 unemployed persons in the state of Michigan, and 89,000 jobs on the Pure Michigan Talent Connect website. So we have some gaps here, I think, to fill. I do want to give a little plug for the chamber. We just launched a jobs board. So as you're continuing to look for folks, share that, utilize all the resources at your disposal, as Terry mentioned, and share that with us so that we can continue to promote as well. So at this time, I want to thank Terry and Aaron and Eric's for joining us today for this presentation, and all of you for giving us an hour of your time. And I hope this information has been valuable, and we will share a follow-up email. But in the meantime, the Chamber, Capital Area Michigan Works, we are here for you and to answer any questions that you might need. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the sunshine. Thank you.